Assalamu alaikum, fam. Hope you're doing well. So we're continuing our reading of St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica. Fantastic book for intellectuals and theology students who seek to expand their understanding of correct meanings of the Catholic canon and such. So let's begin. We're in question 3 of the simplicity of God. It's in 8 articles. This is the first article dealing with whether God is a body. Right? Aquinas is going to argue God is not a body, but he lays it out beautifully and brilliantly from his perspective. Very articulate. Okay, we proceed thus to the first article. Objection 1. It seems that God is a body, for a body is that which has 3 dimensions. But Holy Scripture attributes 3 dimensions to God, for it is written, He is higher than heaven, and what wilt thou do? He is deeper than hell, and how wilt thou know? The measure of him is longer than the earth and broader than the sea. Job XI 8:9. Therefore, God is a body. So that's the objection. Now, Aquinas is going to answer with, here we go, over here. As we have said above, question 1, article 9, Holy Writ puts before us spiritual and divine things under the comparison of corporal things. So comparison, right? Hence, when it attributes to God 3 dimensions under the comparison of corporal quantity. So notice that 3 dimensions under corporal quantity. It implies his virtual quantity. So look at that. So you have 3 dimensions and then you have virtual quantity. Thus, by depth, it signifies his power of knowing hidden things. So when it mentions depth, it's talking about God's ability to know what is hidden. By height, the transcendence of his excelling power. So when you mention height, you think excelling power. By length, the duration of his existence. By breadth, his act of love for all. Now the breadth was interesting, right? Because it's extended. That was pretty unique. So the length is for duration, but the breadth is for extendedness. That's really very clever. His act of love for all, or, as says Dionysius, by the depth of God is meant the incomprehensibility of his essence. So really just outside of human reason in a way where God is above human rationality, and that takes faith to know because God is of himself, he argues, incomprehensible in his overall. You can't minimize God, right? By length, the procession of his all-pervading power. By breadth, his overspreading all things. Inasmuch as all things lie under his protection. So look at that. So length, it's all-pervading. Procession of his all-pervading power. So procession sounds a lot like a keeps going, right? Under his protection. Brilliant. Okay, now we're in objection 2. This is what they're posing to Aquinas. Further, everything that has figure is body, since figure is quality of quantity. Look at that. Figure is quality of quantity. Isn't that kind of true? When you think of a figure, you can judge its quality, and you can see how many of it is, right? But God seems to have figure, for it is written, Let us make man to our image and likeness. Genesis I 26. Now a figure is called an image, according to the text, who being the brightness of his glory, and the figure, i.e. image, of his substance. Heb I 3. Therefore God is a body. So that's the objection. Now he's going to answer thus. Reply objection 2. This one is pretty clever. Man is said to be after the image of God, not as regards his body, but as regards that whereby he excels other animals. See, this was unique because when people used to paint God, they used to be like, oh, well, if we're created like God with our limbs, that means we're like God. But no, notice here, it's about the intelligence. It's about the mind, not necessarily the limbs and such. That's really unique. So the consciousness, so excels other animals. Human consciousness is quite different from the other animals, right? Hence, when it is said, Let us make man to our image and likeness, it is added, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea. Genesis I 26. Now man excels all animals by his reason and intelligence. So whenever we see now, from the Catholic perspective, creating the image of God means your consciousness, your reason, intelligence, and how you excel other animals. It's not to do with the actual body, not your boobs and your butt, your feet. No, not that. Not at all. Hence, it is according to his intelligence and reason, which are incorporeal, that man is said to be according to the image of God. So corporeal, incorporeal. So the incorporeal element is what is in the image of God according to Catholics, not the body. So if the artists are painting it like God as an old man, right? It's like, no, that's not what they meant. Incorporeal. So that one was really perfectly worded to understand Aquinas' perspective. He laid it out for us flat. Objection 3. Further, what has corporal parts is a body. Now Scripture attributes corporal parts to God. Hast thou an arm like God? Job xi 4. And the eyes of the Lord are upon the just. Psalms XXXIII 16. And the right hand of the Lord hath wrought strength. Therefore God is a body. So now we're going to see the reply. Reply objection 3. Aquinas writes, corporal parts are attributed to God in Scripture on account of his actions. So this is, okay, so remember how we had the incorporeal part, so human reason and intelligence. Now, the actual corporal part he's contending is about the actions, okay? And this is owing to a certain parallel. For instance, the act of the eye is to see. Hence, the eye attributed to God signifies his power of seeing intellectually, not sensibly. See, that one is like, what's so unique about the distinction here? It's about this, not sensibly. It's about the intellectually. So the eye of God doesn't mean God has a literal eye he's contending. It's about the action of the eye, the function of the eye. It's, it's above the senses. It's intellectually. It's like such a brilliant way to write it. And so on with other parts. So each part, if it's attributed, it's the action of what that part of the body does, right? It's not the actual like thing, like a something that could be touched like that. It's from I think that's what he's working out for us. Objection 4. Further, posture belongs only to bodies, but something which supposes posture is said of God in the Scriptures. I saw the Lord sitting, Isaiah vi 1, and he standeth up to judge, Isaiah III 13. Therefore, God is a body. So now he's going to reply to that for us, which is really unique. Whatever pertains to posture also is only attributed to God by some sort of parallel. So he keeps mentioning parallel, right? He is spoken of as sitting on account of his unchangeableness and dominion. So when you think about that, sitting, it's not moving. So if it's not moving, it's not changing like that in the same way. So to sit in terms of unchangeableness and dominion, so it's like a seat of authority, it's pretty much just like he's making it sound. And as standing, on account of his power of overcoming whatever withstands him. That one part is unique. So when they say that, oh, God is standing, it means he's withstanding, because nothing can overpower him. Very unique in the way he words that. Okay, objection 5. Further, only bodies or things corporal can be a local term wherefrom or whereto. But in the Scriptures God is spoken of as a local term, whereto, according to the words, come ye to him, and be enlightened, and as a term wherefrom all they that depart from thee shall be written in the earth. Therefore God is a body. And then it goes on further. On the contrary, it is written in the Gospel of St. John, God is a spirit. Okay, now objection 5 is very succinct the way Aquinas words it. We draw near to God by no corporal steps. See that? It's not like physical, right? Since he is everywhere. You see that? That's what's unique about how Aquinas just lays it out, something that makes so much sense. The way he writes very clearly, right? A theological book that is written to the point for anybody to understand. So it's about God. God is everywhere. It's not just in one spot, not fixed to where you walk to God. That would mean, because if you walk to God like that, that would mean God is not somewhere else. So he has to be everywhere. Do you see what I'm saying? But by the affections of our soul. So it's not about walking to God with corporal steps, but about the affection of the soul, Aquinas argues. And by the actions of that same soul do we withdraw from him. So the actions of the soul and the affections of our soul, you see? Thus, to draw near to or to withdraw signifies merely spiritual actions based on the metaphor of local motion. So spiritual actions, and then it's a metaphor of local motion. So it's not that you're literally walking with corporal steps, but it is a metaphor of local motion. He worded that very specific. Now, he'll give us his final closing statement on whether God is a body. So he's answered no, quite clearly, right? Quite clearly. So remember, he said height, that's transcendence of his excelling power. Length is about the duration of his existence. 3 dimensions, virtual quality, depth, knowing what is hidden, and such. I answer that it is absolutely true that God is not a body, and this can be shown in 3 ways. First, because no body is in motion. Nobody is in motion unless it be put in motion. And remember, God is the first movement, as we learned in the previous articles. So God cannot be a body, because that would mean someone would have to put God in motion. Do you see what he's saying? As is evident from question 2, article 3, that God is the first mover and is himself unmoved. So God is the first mover, therefore God cannot be unmoved. Therefore that proves God is not a actual body, right? Therefore it is clear that God is not a body. Secondly, because the first being must of necessity be in act and in no way potentiality. For although in any single thing that passes from potentiality to actuality, the potentiality is prior in time to the actuality, nevertheless, absolutely speaking, actuality is prior to potentiality. Now that's quite unique. For whatever is in potentiality can be reduced into actuality only by some being in actuality. Yes, so there has to be something being in actuality for the potentiality to become actuality. Now it has been already proved that God is the first being. Exactly. Remember the first mover, as he noted. It is therefore impossible that in God there should be any potentiality. Aha, you see? So, God is the first mover, the first being. So, God is the one who is unmovable, unchangeable. So, there isn't any potentiality in God, because God is what gives the potentiality, because he's the first mover. Sets things in motion, right? According to Aquinas. But every body is in potentiality, exactly. Because the continuous, as such, is divisible to infinity. So, potentiality is divisible into infinity. It is therefore impossible that God should be a body. Thirdly, because God is the most noble of beings. Now, it is impossible for a body to be the most noble of beings. Aha! So, God doesn't have this sort of like human body he's contending, because that is not the most noble of beings. God is above that. For a body must be either animate or inanimate. So follow that. A body has to either be animate or inanimate. Moving or unmoving, basically. You follow? And an animate body is manifestly nobler than any inanimate body. But an animate body is not, you following? An animate body is not animate precisely as a body. Otherwise, all bodies would be animate. That's a good point. So, there's bodies that are not animate. Therefore, it is animation depends upon some other thing. So, if it was animate, the bodies that are animate, they depend on something else to first move them, right? As our body depends for its animation on the soul. That's true. Your soul compelling your finger to move, your foot to twitch, right? Besides your nervous system, right? That's not what he means. He means like there has to be that mover, that cause. So the soul is what animates the body. Hence, that by which a body becomes animated must be nobler than the body. So what makes the body animated, what does that, is more nobler than the actual body. And since God is the most noblest, he wouldn't need a body, right? Therefore, it is impossible that God should be a body. Exactly, because if it had a body, he's contending, it would make him weaker, because a body depends on something to make it animate, and God doesn't depend on anything. Therefore, he's not a body, because he would be dependent on animation, which would mean it's dependent upon something else. So, that is the first article, whether God is a body. Aquinas says, hands down, No smack dab, no. And that, remember, when it says that whether man is created in the image of God, it's referring to how human consciousness excels other animals, right? By reason and intelligence, not by the body, because God doesn't have a body. So God does not create humans in his image because God doesn't have a body, right? So if someone misunderstands that humans look like God in their physical body, rather no. It has to do with a small potentiality of intelligence and reason. And even that, as Aquinas has argued in previous sections, reason of humans is not anything comparable to God, but rather they're similar to God is in spirit, and they're that type of way. But still, God's essence is incomprehensible to humans, right? So again, Aquinas has laid it out perfectly in his Summa Theologica in a very, logical way that we can follow quite clearly. So I hope you learned something.